everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. Once again, today joined by my good friend Mark Darden. What's up, Mark? How are you?
Hey, doing pretty good.
Awesome. Always a fun time when we're looking at some nostalgic old Image comics from the very beginning, 1992. As those of you who are following the videos have been seeing, we've been reviewing issue 2 from all the Founding Fathers, who we are now here with SHADOWHAWK number 2. So we're going to get going right away. First thing I want to mention about this cover, there's a few things, but isn't it odd that there's just 2 kids standing on this New York rooftop?
Yeah, and they're kind of funny looking kids too. It's definitely, it's not the best. The gimmick of cover 1 was better, and the art on cover 3 is way better.
Yeah.
This is his weakest cover of the series, and probably honestly my only negative thing to say about the issue. The cover is pretty lackluster.
I just like I never really paid attention to it, I guess, through all these years. And then this morning I looked at it, I'm like, where are these kids' parents? Like, their kids are just hanging out on a rooftop in New York City, you know, amongst the skyscrapers. Doesn't sound safe to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. So to me, this does not seem abnormal with a lot of 2 working parents and no one who watches the kids. Kids being off in places they're not supposed to be, left alone for hours on end without supervision. Pretty normal life, as far as I know. So that part's not weird to me.
So in suburbia, the kids, you know, when the parents are gone, they go play in the woods and stuff. So in New York City, kids go play on rooftops, I guess. Makes sense.
Yeah, the one alleyways, the probably the stairwells, probably looking for tunnels, you know, stuff that seems cool.
So other than that, for the cover, I will mention, you know, we talked about issue 1 kind of having kind of a gimmick cover.
Yeah.
This one has a slight gimmick cover. It's not so obvious, but where all the silver parts, obviously not obvious in the PDF here, but all the silver parts of SHADOWHAWK and the logo kind of shine a bit when you turn the comic. But nothing too major, nothing where they're charging you an extra expense for embossed or cut out covers or anything like that.
Yeah, and the drawing level though it's just shocking because I have so many nice things to say about the interiors. But if you strip the Image eye off this comic, it would look like an unknown person just doing an indie comic in the 80s during the black and white boom.
It does feel a little amateurish. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's odd.
I would say the best part of this cover, honestly, is the background. Once again, you know, we'll probably talk about it when we go through the book, but I find that Valentino is really, really skilled with the backdrops and the architecture and stuff. And I think it looks really good on the cover here in silhouette with just kind of, you know, the windows and the light kind of shining through. But yeah, other than that, nothing really impressive art-wise. We talked a little bit about Arson already, the villain of the piece, last review. Again, not a very inspiring design. I mean, he's got some kind of 90s style guns, but other than that, not very memorable.
Yeah, he's a quick throwaway. And definitely the same way that SHADOWHAWK is kind of his version of Batman. This is his version of Firefly, I would assume, but Firefly had a better costume.
For sure. Yeah, and it's telling that you mentioned Batman, because as we go through this book too, it's the first time I really noticed kind of Dark Knight Returns kind of vibes in some of the story presentation and the narration that we get from SHADOWHAWK. Really kind of reminds me of that. But I guess we'll talk about more of that when we get inside the book. You ready to crack this one open?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And so when I proposed this idea, there were 2 comics that really stood out to me. As with Image, like they've kicked off, they've got their number 1s out the gate. Who would refine and get better as they went on, and who maybe would find out about all the pressures of making comics and slip. And so far I've been more pleasantly surprised because Youngblood was a little better background art, a little more story. Spawn was the one I was thinking of where like there was a good drop off on that one. You know, just there a lot of that Spawn art wasn't was not as good. There was a lot of boring poses. The Violator art was really good, but then also story-wise, it didn't feel like much happened. And then we got the Wildcats, and Wildcats was one of the pleasant surprises where it's like, oh yeah, it was a little bit better. It wasn't worlds apart, but it was a little better. Savage Dragon pretty much just held course because it was just great out the gates. But Shadowhawk to me was the standout where when I flipped back through it, I was like, oh, whoa, this is what issue 2 is way better than issue 1. And like in the late, it's really kind of the colors, refinement of the art, the backgrounds keep getting better. And he reminds me of an artist I worked with before where he just peppers in so many details. Like, yeah, he's not the sharpest of the artists. Like, he's not the rock star, but he's putting in the time to fill out the pages and give you all the details to really do everything he can within the confines of his skills to make this a good looking comic.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think what separates him from the other Image guys, right, is kind of like you mentioned, maybe aesthetically not quite as, pleasing to the eye when it comes to the figures and stuff like that, but he's really solid when it comes to the environments and the backgrounds, right? He really, even this first page, we've got, there's one panel which is a close-up that has no backgrounds, which is fine, but every other panel just has a really good amount of backgrounds and detail that really give you a sense of the environment that they're in. I don't know, this is taking place in New York, so I'm assuming that what's meant to be happening here is they're walking into Central Park or something, and they're meeting like the Warriors, right? Something similar to that.
Listen to your Uncle Jimmy Val. Now, if you've never been to New York, if you go there late at night, stay the heck out of the park at night, all right?
Exactly.
You're gonna get jumped. Bad things are gonna happen.
Dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he does just open with like, here, this guy either didn't hear the stories or was trying to be cool and ignored it. And he's just, I'm going to lead you guys on an adventure that's going to go horribly wrong.
And it's funny too how the ruffians are like, they're not even like deep into Central Park. You just walk down one staircase and they're just waiting for you right there.
Yeah. It's a little, you turn the corner like, oh, hey, how you doing? Muggers, this is where we hang out. Right here at the entrance to our park.
Yeah, you're going to have to pay your admission fee. A few things about the credits page I want to mention. So let me just see where it says. There's something that confuses me where it says New York, Anya, Leslie, and Adam. I'm not quite sure exactly what that means. I'm just curious about it. I'm not sure if that's like their friends who live in New York who are maybe helping them out with locations or something, or New York backgrounds, or I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe they sent a few reference photos or filled them in on some details.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out, they're just maybe trying to help them give New York more of an authentic feel in the comic or something. I don't know for sure. I'm just extrapolating there. But this last bit I thought was funny. Special thanks to Dan Fraga for the name Arson. Like, really, Valentino? You couldn't just come up with the name by yourself? And it's not like Arson is the most like, wow, that did not cross my mind. You are so clever, Dan Fraga. So just kind of an odd thing to credit him with, I guess. But
it's also a nice thing to do. If you're hanging out and you're making a comic and you're like, oh, what do I call this guy? And somebody's like, Arson, like, just giving your buddy thanks.
Early Image with their creator rights and stuff, I think we're very big into giving credit where credit is due. So that's probably part of what that is.
Yeah.
And then,
nice thing to do.
Yeah. And then it says, and to Hank Canals. So does that relate to the name? Not necessarily. So what did Hank Canals do? So he mentions with Dan Fraga why he's thanking him, but he doesn't really mention why he's thanking Hank Canals, which is odd to me.
Maybe he helped with dialogue a little bit. Who knows?
Maybe. So I guess we know that Jim and Rob were friends, so maybe through them, Hank was also friends with Valentino for some reason. Anyways, just an odd thing kind of in the credits there.
Yeah.
And you mentioning, Valentino earlier on, I think you were saying something about, how he doesn't, the other guys had trouble eventually because, they were just starting up their books, the company, the studio, this and that, books were late. Jim Valentino had a bit more experience than the other Image guys, because before he worked for Marvel, he was an indie guy, and he did, publish his own book, and he had a fairly disciplined outlook on it, and was putting out his, like, for example, Normal Man, I think, was bi-monthly, and he was pretty much sticking to that schedule.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and probably saw all the problems inherent in self-publishing coming before all the other guys. So I feel like that probably helps him out a little bit too. Whereas the other guys are kind of flailing and putting out books late. Even if he's not the most exciting artist, he's on the ball and putting stuff out on time. And I mentioned this before, as a kid, even though SHADOWHAWK wasn't the flashiest of books, I definitely appreciated that, because when it was solicited was when you were going to get it. All those times I was disappointed by all the other Image books. I'd come in a week at the comic shop and like, oh, it's not in yet. All right, we're going to have to wait a little bit longer. SHADOWHAWK was kind of the one solid book you could count on. And Spawn was late a few times. Maybe Spawn is just the second book that's a little bit more dependable than all the other guys.
Yeah, I think the other great thing about SHADOWHAWK is that if you're an indie comic maker who's trying to learn how to make comic books, his are good ones to look at, because you can see the techniques, you can see what you need to do, but you can also see a version of stuff where, like, you can do what he's doing and maybe you can push it and get better, but you can learn the craft from it. Like, visually, when I look at this first page, I already know the story without really reading the words. Like, there's this stairwell leading down. You see people at the top. There's, via the colors and how they're standing, there's almost a little bit of an ominous feel to it. You see the facial expressions next, like they're thinking about it. Like, they're already kind of letting you know, they kind of know they shouldn't do this. And then obviously they walk down the stairs and are immediately surrounded by dangerous people with weapons. So you know the story without even reading the words. And that's good visual storytelling.
100%. Yeah, we've talked about this before, where I'm like, if you can get stuff across in the visuals and in the illustrations rather than in the dialogue and narration, so much better. And it makes for an easier read. And I've talked before about, being annoyed by pages with tons of dialogue and tons of narration. This, I think, SHADOWHAWK overall strikes a really good balance between dialogue, narration, and the art. There's never really a page where I'm like, oh man, I'm like, I'm going to have to read all this. There always seems to be just the right amount of stuff not to get bogged down with the dialogue and the narration. And I got to mention, some of this dialogue on this first page is kind of hilarious. Reading this when I was 12 years old, still a virgin, just, slowly, figuring out that I'm into girls and stuff. This line where he's like, his name is Andrew Craigson, an engineering student so socially awkward that he can't even make time with Jill Ecker, and she's supposed to be easy. I was like, that's quite an interesting line to throw in there.
This date is in the bag. I don't know why you're
like
life at the Deadly Park.
she's easy, dude. You don't even have to put out any effort here,
Yeah. Maybe a little too honest, but that is a reality. It is a reality you could share with people.
I'm sure there are easy girls out there, right? Yeah, for sure.
Does happen in life. Just this one, though. That's not saying as a whole, just this one. And that's. But I do appreciate all the detail, the page, especially with that bottom panel where it does extend up. So you're getting
basically a splash page, right?
Yeah, with some panels on top. But yeah, and they put some markings on the rock, and you've got trees. All the people have the weapons. And again, I appreciate the colorist. They're doing something a little different in a lot of the panels, and they do that throughout the book, where there'll be panels where they just do a different kind of color scheme to make that page pop from the rest. So a lot to like about it.
Yeah, good start here. And no needless detail, you know what I mean? It's always stuff to kind of either move the plot along or to evoke the environment, right? It's not like noodly art necessarily, but it's like, like you said, that the graffiti on the rocks, right? And the grass and all these nice little, the cracks in the sidewalk. Like, it just helps to evoke the environment that they're in really well. All right, let's move on to the next couple of pages.
Yeah. Page 2 really continues the storytelling. I mean, you see Shadowhawk running. You can get a sense like he's trying to get there. And
He's
then they're
definitely
telling, they're telling what's going through the head of this guy. I mean, he's trying to give like, okay, don't hurt us. And then it flipping over to that third panel where it goes into these unrealistic colors, but that are expressing emotion with the red and the little bits of purple. And then
yeah.
obviously the outcome where it doesn't go well.
Yeah, I thought that last panel on that page is kind of really on the nose. But again, if we're talking about storytelling and clarity and stuff like that in what's going on, there's no questioning exactly what's going on here. He's literally getting shot in the head.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a brutal city. Yeah. The girl's got a face of shock, maybe not enough body language for it, but the other couple in the background holding each other from it.
Yeah, and they use kind of a monochrome color scheme all throughout the panel, kind of a bluish purple, so that the character in the middle is really focused on and lighter and pops out. And again, clarity in the storytelling definitely appreciated here.
Yeah.
On the right, we get a pretty cool shot of Shadowhawk. I think that looks pretty good. And
Yeah.
there's moments, I think I mentioned it before, but sometimes, in the way he depicts Shadowhawk, I get a bit of a Norm Brayfogle vibe. There's just something about here that I feel resembles a bit of the work that Norm Brayfogle was doing on Batman in around the same time, maybe a few years earlier, actually.
Yeah, I really like this near splash page a lot, and I think it's a step up from like the main shot we got a Shadowhawk in the last one, because I do like that forward lean pose he gets going. And he does do the angling with the buildings in the background, which there's a name for that. I remember hearing it recently, and I forget what.
3-point perspective.
Okay, but the for the leaning building thing, the just canting the background.
Oh, oh man, like the Batman TV show, the Dutch
Yeah,
tilt. Dutch tilt.
Yeah, Dutch tilt. Yeah. That part's cool. One of my faves is this first building in the background, the way they shade the bricks,
Yeah.
both what Valentino does and what the colorist does. That's the thing I really appreciate, because it's realistic looking, but it's gritty and it just adds a little bit of extra detail. My other favorite to it is this gargoyle in the front. It's not at all realistic. Like, I would not expect to see a gargoyle like this anywhere, but it gives the city such personality. And also, because of how the gargoyle is kind of screaming, it also, to me, whether it's intentional or not, adds to like the moment of like, this is a terrible moment. Like, this guy's just shot, Shadowhawk's too late. It's just like the city's screaming from what's happening.
Like the city's telling Shadowhawk, like, hey, something's going on here. Like, yeah, oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. And again, to once again mention the Batman influence. I mean, I think that's meant to be kind of a bat or a man bat. So
yeah. Yeah. I think my only and I do like that they changed the color motif for the other panel on the page, going to this purple and blue. I think that works. My only gripe with it is that Shadowhawk himself, I think they either needed to go with, instead of like the dull silver color they have, they either needed a bright silver color, maybe get some white in there, maybe outline his figure, something so that everything else is kind of muted, but you can see him coming into this scene, because you really have to look for him.
Yeah, he does tend to blend into the background a little bit, just not art wise, but color wise. So yeah, like you said, just a much lighter gray or silver on his armor would have really helped out with that. Some of this narration though from Shadowhawk, like I said, this is what makes me I feel those kind of Dark Knight Returns vibes, but almost like, I don't know if you've ever read some of the parody comics of Dark Knight Returns, because there was a shitload obviously that came out. And I always feel like I've mentioned this before, where I wonder if Jim Valentino's kind of doing this book a little bit tongue in cheek, maybe not all the time, but like there's a bit of parody in it. You are a stranger passing in the night. So cheesy. Like that's way past the stuff in Dark Knight as far as cheese goes. Or perhaps the right man in the right place at the right time. Like it's just really on the nose.
Yeah, he is a guy talking to himself a bit. It's interesting. A woman's scream pierces your ears. You race to find its source. Like, are you pep talking yourself throughout the night, Shadowhawk? Is this?
You're just narrating your own adventures. Like, it's a little odd.
Yeah, it's funny. It's humorous. There's some other examples of not taking it too seriously in this issue that I think we'll get to.
I feel like there's a bit of that. Like, I can't believe that he's taking himself fully seriously when he's doing this. It's almost like, well, I'm joined Image, right? It's dark and gritty, so I got to do some dark and gritty, but I'm going to have a little bit of fun with it. And obviously, as a kid, when I was reading these early Shadowhawks, I probably hadn't read Dark Knight Returns yet. It would happen pretty soon. But, so I wasn't aware. So I was just reading it at the first degree, and I was like, man, this Shadowhawk guy, he's so dark. That was kind of the vibe I was feeling.
One of the other details I really like, and this is, again, it's just a matter of putting in the time into the craft, is on his belt, like the detail of the pouches.
Yeah.
Pouches are very individual and look great, but then also the strap coming down to the Hawk Star with the multi-straps going off of it.
Yeah.
That's just a time-consuming detail, but he puts in the time along with the buildings in the background. I really appreciate it. It definitely, I think we've mentioned it, but it feels like a TMNT kind of influence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like you could easily see him running into them. The buildings strike me as being similar. Of course, they're both set in New York, so hitting.
There's going to be similarities. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll agree that I do really like the attention detail with that strap coming down, and it's probably attached to his thigh here. And, it's taking the time to do that kind of detailing and logic, I guess, to the costume. Unfortunately, there's none of that logic applied to the Shadowhawk armor, right? I don't know exactly how he's bending his legs and moving around in that thing, but hey, it's comic books, All right. So eventually, Shadowhawk bursts onto the scene, and we know what's coming next, right?
Yeah. This page, I really do like the cinematic fight scene that he's got going with the panels, and I love that it keeps switching colors because it keeps the mood and dramatic, starting with the blue and then getting to be what did you call that, where you got, as you go redder, they're more fiery, there's something to it.
Well, listen, the red is the color of violence, right? When we talk about symbology and stuff. So we're going from the night and the setting, right? And the blue and the nighttime to kind of colors that are evoking what's going on and the more and more extreme level of violence, which, again, color-wise, I think is just a really nice touch. Storytelling-wise as well, it works really well.
And I do love that he goes to the sound effect in the last one, framing the mask into the sound effect and having the sound effect break. My criticism, I do wish there were more panels for the fight scene, maybe slim them in and have more individual moves. I'm not going to demonstrate, but I was in my room for like 15 minutes acting out this fight, and these moves don't gel. It's just,
they're not sequential.
Like I did the kick, and then I went to, like, there's just no way you kick with the left and then you stretch across and you punch also with the left. Like, you would get no power coming across like this.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
I'm having a lot of fun imagining you miming this in your room. That's a pretty funny image to me.
It was pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I was like coming up, holding the pose, and then, okay, but then when you spin, like, you're coming back around to your left elbow, like you throw a left kick, you're throwing a left punch. Well, the next move would be you spin to your right elbow, or you would come around.
You would alternate. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, or the elbow would be like a front elbow. If you were going to go back elbow, it's got to be the right one. But if you came around with the front elbow, you could be reaching down and also grabbing your Hawk Star. But then, and he does this in a lot of them, the throw should be more, which I guess it kind of works out, but the throw should be this way. If I'm picturing that he's spinning like he's a whirly derby in the middle of these guys. So that just makes the most sense to me. And if you're whirly derbying, again, this move ain't going to work. I know it was in the Batman movie and it was all cool, but that was because he was surprising a guy around a corner.
Yeah.
It makes far more sense that it's a wide open backhand. So I feel like a little, maybe go work with a fight choreographer, go watch maybe go to watch like some people practice martial arts.
Some
Because,
UFC or something. Yeah.
yeah, the moves don't work here. And maybe that's going too far. I mean, but
It's
yeah,
comic books, right?
it is comic books. Yeah, but just give
Well,
me a
to
little.
me, that first panel, like right away, kicking and punching on the same side, like left leg and left arm, there's no momentum. You're killing
Yeah,
any momentum at all. So your hits wouldn't have much impact. And the third panel, we're only at issue 2.
yeah.
It hasn't been established necessarily that it's been established that he breaks people's spines, but it
Hmm.
hasn't been established that he would be willing to kill a criminal.
Oh,
But if you look at that third panel,
yeah,
he just throws the hawk star into someone's jugular, and the sound effect too, right? Splorch, that kind of implies that there's some bloodletting going on there. So that's just, we're not going to go back on that moment. So is that guy dead? Did he bleed out? Was he lucky and it just nicked him or something? I don't know, but that's just kind of an odd thing to throw out there. If you're not going to establish eventually that SHADOWHAWK also kills, which maybe
yeah,
he does later on in the series, but I don't seem to remember that. I know his thing was breaking spines,
yeah.
turning guys into paraplegics, but not killing.
Yeah, last issue he threw the Hawk Star into a police officer's hand, and then we didn't see a lot of blood. Like it hit the hand and took the weapon out, but obviously it really would have probably stuck in or sliced across. Um, did he use this move in first issue too? I feel like we
It,
talked about it.
I think, yeah, it's kind of similar. There's a similarity there, just one of the action sequences in issue 1 for sure.
Yeah, Batman '89 made too much of an impression, but
There's that influence as well, yeah, for sure.
yeah, but I do get a very movie poster feel from this fight. That's kind of one of the things I like, where it does have, and you've seen that in movie posters where they do the color switching and then
Yeah,
you get to a logo. So I feel like there's some draw from that, but it's a nice touch. I just would have liked to see maybe throw in 1 or 2 more action panels so you could separate what the actual moves are and make them look a little more. I understand we're in a comic book, but still just a little bit realistic.
sure.
The party scene, pretty good. The that first guy confuses me because my eyes think immediately, is this that reporter? Because we get the 3 newscasters
Yeah.
from the Spawn comic, and everybody in Image uses some of them in their early comics, and I'm like, is that guy? And I don't think it is, but visually he looks so similar.
I got the sense that he was that guy because they talk about later on that he works for Channel 37 now,
Oh,
right?
well,
And he's got
yeah.
the little 37 on his suit lapel, right?
Okay, good catch.
And I
Yeah.
remember you mentioned that every time we see him, he's on a different channel,
Yeah.
right? Like he's just a hothead and he's getting fired and then moving on to a different station, right?
Yeah.
And later on in this issue, we'll actually see him in a news segment. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what Valentino was going for. I was going to say, out of all those newscasters in the Spawn comic, this is the most characterization we've gotten out of any of them, right?
Yeah, so far. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
far, but I don't know of any other Image book where one of those reporters appeared for quite such a long. I mean, it's not that long, but it's a fairly long sequence here, a whole page, and then we see him a little bit later on when he's on the news.
Yeah, and it's so he's talking with a fellow reporter, yes, from his same channel. So they're there at the party. And
Yeah,
again, Batman '89, because Bruce Wayne threw the expensive party, and then the 2 reporters were there discussing, trying to get an interview with him.
you're absolutely right. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, I do like their walk through the party, the police officer who shows up, and we learn a lot about him. There's a real setup here, but I appreciate how they've muted the colors and they keep this one scene going as they walk through the party. It is a little odd that everyone's outfits are in blue and muted, but their faces are in white or in flesh color. I feel
Sure.
like they just should have all been in the muted blue.
Old blue, absolutely.
Yeah. And the little bit of lighting around him, I like that touch. I think it works well.
Yeah, it's just like you said, the flesh color added to the background characters
Mhm.
just kind of, it the effect he's going for with kind of the blue monochrome to separate the main characters that are talking from the background crowd doesn't work. It still works, but not quite as well as if they had just been kind of fully monochrome.
Yeah, they almost pop out like fireflies in the night. It takes a little bit of the effect away. But yeah, I love the two reporters chatting. I think that's a really nice touch.
Yeah, and another page, like I said, dialogue wise, that maybe a bit more dialogue that we've seen before in other pages, but I still feel like it's just the right amount, and moving you through the page in the right way and everything just works. This page works really well for me as a non-action, maybe more characterization page, right?
Yeah, we get a lot of backdrop about this detective guy. We saw him in the last scene where he's sort of like, they're going to run into a building and then he shows up and there's a little bit of like, well, wait a minute, is that SHADOWHAWK? And then as they're talking to him, the person's like, I don't understand, why did you become a police officer? Like, you're from a wealthy background. And so they really go into setting him up story-wise as like, this could be one of the guys who's SHADOWHAWK. It's almost a little bit, which I guess this came out first, but Superman died and they had to force Superman, and which one of them is it?
Sure.
There's kind of a few people in this set up as possibilities for who is SHADOWHAWK.
Yeah, because last issue they established this guy, but I feel like in this issue there's a few more characters that are introduced that lead you to think that, hey, this could be SHADOWHAWK as well, right?
Yeah, there was the one guy on the street who was talking with his brother. So there's a little bit of
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he was kind of the other major player. There was the detective that was set up. I feel like there's supposed to be more, but those are the two that kind of stick out so far. Okay, and then there's one last quirky thing, and we'll notice this a few times during the book, but most of the word balloons are really good in this, much better than Youngblood 2, where obviously there was some delay issues or something because a lot of those were messed up. This one, I get the impression they've got balloon cutouts, maybe some stock standards, because there's a number of instances where the balloon doesn't point to the speaker's mouth, which is typically what you do. It doesn't have to go into their mouth, but it just points towards the mouth.
It should. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I see it down there.
Yeah, or the head of the speaker versus this one. We know who it is, but it almost points as if there's someone below the panel who's talking. So it's a small critique, but that balloon tail should really point towards her mouth or at least her head at the very least. And so I get the impression they've got cutouts that they're filling in and then putting on top. And sometimes they're a little imperfect.
Yeah, they're not lining up perfectly.
Yeah. That was my one small note.
All right, next page.
Yeah. Yeah, they really lay out this guy's backstory a lot. It's a real Bruce Wayne story, basically. He saw his family killed when he was young. He's from wealth, but instead of putting on a costume, he's a police officer. So they sort of set him up like he could be SHADOWHAWK, but then very quickly also eliminate him as a candidate, or he's keeping his cover story going because as the page carries on, a guy from the mayor is like, hey, stay off of this SHADOWHAWK thing. You're kind of making it worse by exposing it so much. Yeah. And he's like, no, this is my job. We got this guy out on the streets, crime everywhere. This guy's breaking criminals. He's snapping their spines. I'm on this. I'm not backing off. So it's interesting. It's like, it very much sets it up like this would be the perfect candidate to be SHADOWHAWK, right? So his parents die. He's got money. But via his talk, hey, I'm not the dude. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's almost like they're making it a bit too obvious as the choice for SHADOWHAWK, where if you know anything about Batman, you're going to be like, wow, clearly this is the guy, right?
Yeah.
Few comments art-wise. The first panel there's a character behind the two reporters. We see the back of the head. It looks weird to me. It almost feels like maybe the character had been drawn like from the face and then it was kind of distracting and they, just a bit of an art correction to draw the back of the character's head. I almost feel like that's a Rob Liefeld cameo in this book. It definitely looks like Rob Liefeld's haircut from back in the day, which is quite similar to the haircut he still has today.
It looks very much like Rob Liefeld from the what was the Image spoof comics that were done, like
Splitting Image
or something.
Yeah,
it does look like how the artist drew him in that very much.
Splitting Image is a great book. It's the book that keeps on giving, because as a kid when I read it, I
Uh-huh.
understood some of the jokes, but I didn't know a lot of the backstory. As I've grown older and learned a lot of the backstory, when I go back and read it, it's very funny. It's very hilarious. Another art comment. This will
Hmm.
be from my dirty mind file, but the depiction of her leaning over the edge and the way he defined her buttocks there, one already I find is a little funny and a little weird, because I feel like if you were going to define the butt like that, you would probably define a bit of her thigh as well. That bottom part of her body just ends up looking like a cock. I'm sorry, it just does.
I kind of see it now that you pointed out, but I do think you're going pretty far to get there.
Hey, I don't think I had to go that far. No,
Oh, but no,
no further than this page, basically. Yeah.
they're at a party. It's a woman leaning over. Um,
I just art wise, I find it weird. There should be like more of a thigh distinction. I don't know. Anyways,
yeah,
let's move on.
there is a line there, but yeah, it's well,
It's a little phallic. Anyways, leave it to me to spot that stuff.
yeah. They does do that small bit with the panel that has a has an odd shape. Just little, I don't know, stylistic graphic choices. I dig. Again, backgrounds and all the stuff, especially with that fourth panel where it's the down shot. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a lot of work. It's literally a lot of other artists probably would have just cropped in, done a close up of the characters with very little background in it, just showing like the three heads in a little bit of distance,
yeah.
maybe nothing background wise. But he goes for this angled city shot, shows the street below with all these cars going by, a couple other buildings in the background. It's a lot of extra work. There's genuinely a lot to appreciate from the time and effort he puts in to fill this comic out.
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier on in the review at the beginning, it's just all the backgrounds are very evocative. Uh, you know, when we did the review for issue one, we mentioned like the architecture and how great it looks, and again, it really helps to set the scene, and really feels authentic to New York City.
Yeah, you definitely feel like you're in a busy city via his storytelling. Um, the next page, the arson character, this angle is weird. I dig the two guys coming in from the sides who are framing this shot, and they clearly look upset. And the dialogue's led into this. Like, here's all these problems in the city, and you're worried about me, i.e., the cop. And then boom, we're right into one of these terrible things going on. But Arson himself, I get the sense like he's laying back, almost like he's laying on the ground in the fire, which, if drawn to really look that way, would also be amazing. It'd be pretty terrifying of a guy who's just laying, reveling in a fire. But the angle, I'm like, I get the sense he's supposed to be looming over them, but that's or laying on the floor. It's kind of in between.
Yeah, it's like the planes and the perspective of the two firefighters in the foreground and him in kind of the middle ground background don't really work together. Yeah, they're not.
Yeah,
It's almost like they're not in the same panel, really.
yeah. I genuinely wish this scene actually played out a little slower. Like if we saw them go into the building with him saying, "And you're worried about me," and then we saw them come upon this guy in the flames, laying down on the floor or something, and then pop up to engage them.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
only
we're
other,
we're thrown in right in the middle of this building, probably being already half destroyed by the fire.
yeah, it's the only time there's not really a setup shot. I mean, we can figure it for ourselves that they must be inside of a building because we already knew about the buildings being burned down before from the previous issue, and there's the
That's it.
firefighters. But it's the one time he didn't give us like a setup shot of like a burning building, and we could have seen little silhouettes running in or something.
Yeah, the transition from the conversation scene to that is a little jarring for sure.
Yeah.
As is his cod piece here. Sorry, I do have to
Oh,
mention that.
that one. I
He's definitely trying to impress on us something.
Yeah. Oh, also this that third panel of the mask shot. I also think is a little off, because if you look at the mask that's in panel, well, it's not really panel 2, but in the big splash panel,
Doesn't,
that's not
yeah.
what his helmet looks like. So the close up then doesn't connect because the shape of the helmet is changed.
Yeah, you're right. I never noticed that. That's a little weird.
Yeah, threw me off a little.
Also, you know, again, it's comic books. It's not necessarily realistic, but you know, if we're to assume his armor is metal and that's like a glass plate, not the best thing to be hanging around fires dressed up like that. Like he'd be cooking inside that costume, right?
Yeah, it can't be metal. It's got to be something else. I mean, there are fire suits. So what is this?
Sure. Yeah, but I definitely feel like he's going for a metallic texture here, so it's very odd. And if
Yeah.
that faceplate was like plexiglass or not glass, well, then it would melt onto his face, right? So
It's it's a confusing one.
I kind of like this shot here with like Arson again. We've talked about it. He's not a very memorable character, but the design of kind of the fire coming out of his gun and the whole kind of chaotic flames and stuff, I think look really cool on this page. Work really well.
Yeah.
The actual, you know, rendering of it is maybe not so great, but the composition and the layout I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, seeing that guy burning in the flames, and the flames sort of separating the panels a bit, because then you've got the panel of this man now on fire trying to run out, and they frame it via just giving the flames a different color. I agree with you. I like that. And it's also another page where they sort of like, you're in this scene and then they pop to the next scene, and this one does it again where you're in this burning building. I guess we're really just running off of what we kind of knew from the previous issue of, like, you know, there's buildings being burned, you know, there's this guy doing it. Here he is doing it, 2 pages of it, and then they're off to the next. Which gets this weird scene. We've got this kind of vigilante kid or adult, I just think kid, but it's probably an adult in the city who's getting all armed up.
Yeah, kind of Punisher style. And again, these are 2 characters we haven't been introduced to yet, so it's just like we're thrown right in the middle of it. Don't know exactly what's going on, why this guy has these weapons, right?
Yeah, and they're in the building next door, and so it's like, oh, we gotta hurry because our building could be next. And he's like, yeah, but I gotta get all this stuff. And she's like, okay, we gotta get out. And he goes, but hey, I can't be in front of the cops with all this stuff. So
It's kind of an odd kind of setup, yeah, for sure. And it's like, you know, the building next door is on fire. You would think the instinct would be, let's help save some people or maybe get some water on that fire or whatever. And this guy's like, no, I got to set up my Punisher-esque arsenal and find the person responsible for it, and more than likely shoot him and kill him.
Yeah.
I don't think those are rubber bullets, right?
No. And then we get that, as I mentioned before, we get another case where, like, the word balloon just does not connect. Or it's pointing in panel 2, it's pointing down instead of it just has to go up towards the face.
Yeah. It's not like it's a quick fix, right? But I guess no one picked up on it.
Yeah.
And this scene is being introduced obviously as kind of another part of the who is SHADOWHAWK mystery, because I do feel like this character of Christine is meant to be another person that we're like, is that maybe who SHADOWHAWK actually is, right? There's something in the dialogue. Yep, they called me Mina Christina, right? She was on the police force and she got booted off for excessive force. She's got huge bulging muscles, a short haircut. So really trying to establish her as kind of a tomboy, I guess, or you know, possibly a lesbian. I don't know. You could lead, not that it matters, but you can be led to believe that that's what's going on here. But a tomboy in the least, right? So
yeah,
kind of giving us a sense that again she could have the physical prowess and strength and all that, and the motivation to be SHADOWHAWK.
Which interestingly gives me a very similar vibe to the later version of Batwoman that popped up in the 2000s.
Yes.
That was a ex-Marine, had to leave, kept a short haircut.
Had a lot of the same characterization, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as you're a tomboy and you're a woman, you can't have long hair. You got to have short hair. That's just, you know, obviously comics is a visual medium. So I feel like most of the time it's just to really hammer the point across, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way to keep a sense of who the character is.
Yeah.
And then we get that little TV panel shot you were talking about, where we get the news reporter on the side of the television, which I like. It's a nice little touch. Like, you didn't have to do it, but just a little hint of like the, yep, there's them on the news, and it does get into their conversation where they're having a back and forth about the city on fire, which is a bit of an odd conversation. They really talk about. It's a weird conversation. They're talking about how he's kind of saying these people are burning their own homes, and he's saying these people, so he's saying like the poor people of the inner city burning their own homes, and then she's saying, oh, and this is on the next page for. And then his fellow reporter, who we got introduced to at the party, is saying, well, hey, they may not even consider this to be their home. This is they're a prison to them, and they're burning down the prison. I think it's trying to make a point. Well, obviously it's trying to make a point, but feels a little out of place. But also harkens a bit back to Jack Kirby way back in the day when he created the Black Panther character, and he was trying to infuse more diversity into comic books. And then when Image started, they kind of followed that path themselves and really wanted to push more diversity into comic books. It probably doesn't stand out as much today, but in the 90s, like, you had the original Star Trek show, and that was one of the really first representations of having diversity in a cast on television. They were really pushing that of like, hey, it's the future, and everybody's hanging out together.
Yeah.
Which was a good message to make. And they did that in Star Trek The Next Generation as well. And Image Comics seemed to really want to push that as well. Youngblood had women on the team, had people with different backgrounds on the teams. Todd decided to make his character black. Jim Valentino, though we haven't found it out yet, also decided to make his hero black. So he's harkening a bit to kind of a Black Panther Batman character, but he's trying to have a social economic conversation going on, but it's very quick and in passing.
Yeah, I always appreciated these little sequences, even though it might feel a little bit forced, but integrating early on in the Image books characters from other books, like the reporter here from Channel 37, who, again, next time we see him, he'll probably be working for another station. But I always like these little touches where they're already early on trying to create that continuity between the books. Obviously, later on, that'll become a bit more problematic. We did the Wildcats review of issue 2, and the next time when we do issue 3, Youngblood is going to be there. I was just wondering about that now that, or eventually when Jim Lee sold Wildstorm to DC, how does that work when they want to reprint that book? Or like the PDF we're looking at is an official DC PDF, but Youngbloods still appear in it. So I was just wondering, I just got questions about how that works exactly later on when the rights and the copyrights and all that got a little more complicated, right? Early on, it was very easy. I'm sure they were just calling each other up and, hey, I'm going to have Badrock and Savage Dragon, and I'm going to have Spawn and Shadowhawk. But later on, you probably couldn't get direct access to the guy, probably had to call the office, talk to the secretary. Then when guys start selling characters to different companies and stuff, it just got more and more complicated, right? I know there's some issues of Savage Dragon where he's got some guest stars in there that he can't reprint, or he's had to ask permission again. It later on, unfortunately, leads to problems when you want to reprint that stuff.
Yeah, I thought when they did the contracts, I thought they signed a rights permission in perpetuity for this version of it. Like, just within the context of reprinting this story, I have forever the right for this specific use of your character.
Yeah, not using the character again later on, but this.
Yeah, like a conversion to a movie or something, that's a different media. But I think just for the purpose of reprinting comics, they had the right in perpetuity to continue reprints.
Well, and like you said, with different mediums, it changes, because I know that's the reason, or one of the reasons, I guess, that in the Spawn movie, it's no longer Chapel that's killed Spawn. I forget her name, but she has a similar name to Chapel. It's like.
Yeah, they did change it for the movie, but in the cartoon, they kept it the same. And HBO continues to show those cartoons in Spawn's reprints. Chapel still appears. So I think as
Those
far
early
as,
issues, yeah.
yeah, just printing the comics, I don't think they have an issue. But for other media,
Well,
uh,
I feel like maybe one of those changes too for the movie was made like, when the HBO cartoon came out, Todd and Rob were probably still buddies. And then by the time the movie came out, there was that whole brouhaha between Image and Rob and all the issues that they had. So he figured, I'm going to change that. And that way I don't have to deal with Rob and I don't have to send him any money, basically.
yeah, who knows? The studio might have just not wanted to deal with it. I do like, again, I guess this a little similar to that shot we got of when he was leaping into the park. But I like, again, that they gave us an angle. It's a pretty good SHADOWHAWK shot. Again, gives us a lot of building details. I mean, the cityscape really does, like, it leads a long ways off into the background because of the angle he gives us, we're seeing multiple buildings and descending levels of the city. So again, if you're really like looking over these pages in detail, there's a lot there. And I really think this is a great example for young comics who are trying to learn how to make a comic book. Like, this is a great example to look at and learn from, where you can fill out these pages with details, but you don't have to necessarily be the sharpest, highly stylized artist yet. But this is teaching you the tools of, like, fill out your pages, tell a good story.
Yeah, whatever Valentino lacks in kind of the sheen and the aesthetic of the '90s Image comics, he makes up for in layout and composition. The strength of his art, I think, really lies upon the composition, the layouts that he's doing here, and that's a good example of it. It's kind of, again, that kind of Dark Knight kind of shot. When you read Dark Knight and you're reading through and there's a lot of small panels and stuff, and then Frank Miller just kind of stops you with one big splash page of Batman doing something cool. That's kind of the sense that I get here with SHADOWHAWK. Just a cool shot of him, but didn't skimp on the backgrounds and the building details and the textures and the crackling of the buildings and stuff. All looks really good for sure.
Yeah. This oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say the second page here, I feel like, so he's introducing Spawn in this issue, right? I
Yeah.
feel like he's purposely also, as we're talking about composition and layout, doing a slightly Spawn-esque or Todd McFarlane-esque kind of page or layout here, right? You've got the kind of overlapping panels, panel 2 and 3 there, which is actually just the same image, which I think works really well. It's pretty cool. And then those kind of vertical lines coming down with Spawn's face in there, somewhat reminiscent of what Todd did on that page we really liked in Spawn #1. So I feel like that's where you got that. And I feel like that's something that could have been used more in Spawn comics. I don't feel like they use that quite enough. Just that shot of, not the whole head, but just the white markings on his face as kind of a design element. I think that always works really well. It looks really cool.
Yeah. I so the appearance here is not my fave. If you cut these 2 pages out of the story, you wouldn't miss anything.
No.
It doesn't really add anything.
Has no impact on the story, really.
Yeah, no impact. And I was trying to think of how to still have the cameo but improve it. And I think one would have been, as SHADOWHAWK is running to the scene, if he had passed the alley where Spawn and the Violator are being given their talk to by Malbosa. Like, can you imagine him as his street level vigilante running along and then just like, okay, that's out of my jurisdiction.
Let me just keep running here.
Yeah, like, to just like see the devil in that and just, no, I'm gonna keep going. That would have been a, like, oh yeah, worlds collide. Like, yeah, that exists right there in your same city. Just that is beyond this world, and I do not need to know more about that. I'm gonna go deal with this guy who has a torch.
I'm a street level alleyway kind of guy. I'm not into the mystical shit.
The other weird thing in the cameo is just how Spawn speaks.
I was gonna say his dialogue is so not characteristic of let's say Al Simmons, right? Because really he's Spawn is all mystical and from hell and stuff, but he's really just Al Simmons, a regular kind of Marine guy who probably speaks, not the way Spawn is talking here for sure, right? What does he say? If you are after the arsonist, I will leave. If you are he, we will dance. Like
Yeah.
it's like Spawn is a poet as well. Like, I don't know. It's just an odd choice for his dialogue.
Yeah, it's like he thought that Spawn was this entity, enigma character that maybe exists across times or throughout time. And so he would be this very old timey character, like the wise, all knowing. But that, like you said, is not the character at all. It's a character who's imbued with that kind of power, but who just showed up yesterday from the modern world. And he's just a regular guy
You know,
with a rough background.
I'd expect this kind of dialogue from, like, I don't know, Dr. Fate or something like that, maybe. Like, if we're going with like mystical characters, right? Like, I get where he's getting it from, that type of dialogue. It just
Yeah.
should not be applied to Spawn. And
No.
this is one of the rare instances too where two characters meet, you know, in Image Comics, or, you know, let's be frank, Image is modeled a lot after Marvel Comics,
Yeah.
where two heroes meet but don't actually fight,
Yeah.
you know, there's no actual confrontation here. They're just kind of having a chat.
Yeah. It's too bad it doesn't work out more meaningfully. It's nice that they could just appear in the same spot without that. It's also too bad that they're not further along. Like issue 4 of Spawn is out and issue 5 comes out the same month as this. So there's a little bit that Jim Valentino really could have looked at. Todd probably should have called up and been like, hey, bud, how's the appearance going?
Yeah.
Let me see what you got. Okay, my guy doesn't talk that way.
That's not how Spawn talks. That's not how he talks. Yeah.
Let me rewrite these lines for you real quick. Here you go. Especially because it's such a small appearance of it's but I was going to say it's too bad it doesn't happen later where Spawn has become the protector of the bums in the alley.
Because then he'd have more of a reason to kind of confront Shadowhawk.
Yeah. Yeah, you're concerned with the burning building. I'm concerned about the fallout with my guys. Well, I'm taking care of this. I'm on it. It could have been a little bit better connection later in the series.
What this feels like to me, honestly, is, you know, because we've looked at this page and then there's just a second page and that's it with Spawn. We're done. It's really just a good reason for Jim Valentino to advertise Shadowhawk 2 as guest starring Spawn.
Yeah.
And because Spawn is, you know, one of the hotter, let me just adjust this here, sorry, is one of the hottest characters from Image, right, early on, and it's Todd McFarlane. It's a good way to sell more books, right?
Yeah. I do like the layout of this page, though. A lot of things that I like just that straight on shot of Shadowhawk, the slight angle of the face, but it's an awesome shot of the helmet because it's almost like the cover of issue 1 where we're just seeing, you know, this bright silvery helmet, but we're actually seeing that under mask and how blank it is, almost like the question where you just have a blank face, but there's a helmet on top and the circular. But then the shot of Spawn, obviously he doesn't draw Spawn as well. The cape's great. He does use the flowing cape very well, but it's
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, but his actual detailing of Spawn, not so great. Spawn going off the roof, though, even again, that's not what he would do. But it does look cool of just like Spawn being this mystical figure who just leaps off and almost like he's sort of Batman glides off, but he's also like magic power just floating away.
I was going to say, you mentioned Batman 1989 before. This is really the exact shot, you know, after he's grabbed the thief and he says, I'm Batman.
Yeah.
And then he jumps off. It almost feels like the same angle and same point of view and everything, right? I can almost hear the wah, 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 right? And he jumps, which is really cool in the movie, right? That's one of the coolest moments, I think. So it definitely feels like he took it from there, I think.
I agree with you. Once you bring it up, I'm like,
I just right away I see that shot of Batman jumping off the building. And again, these 2 pages with Spawn, I do kind of appreciate the fact that he does, I feel, change the layout and the design of the pages to be a little bit more Spawn-esque. And here we can kind of see it as opposed to the page on the right, which maybe has a little bit more just traditional layout and storytelling, although he still does the overlapping panels, which is a very Todd McFarlane thing to do. But on those Spawn pages, at least, he tries to give it that Spawn vibe.
And I like that last panel, just the face shot coming out, because again, the colorist goes into that alternate coloring vibe where it's just for pop colors to make it stand out, and it doesn't have to be realistic. And I love how he does that. And the Shadowhawk, He does really just come out from behind the panel. It's a nice touch.
And color wise, that splash page where we talked about that was really cool, but that the gray was a little too dark. Why not use this kind of thing on that
Mm.
page to create that contrast, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would have worked. The next page, which does one of those things I like, where it's practically a splash page but with panels on top.
Yeah.
And there aren't enough storytelling panels to fill out this page. So had there not been this background, it would have been a very empty feeling page. But he took the time to draw this big splash page, and my only issue with it is that this is the police officer post the party running back to his office, and his partner's in the office, like trying to find out, like, hey man, what's going on with him? He's trying to get evidence
Yeah.
or details.
Get some dirt.
Yeah, get some dirt on him. So he catches his own partner in there and is pointing a firearm at his partner, which you would stop doing. It makes sense to bust in, but then you'd lower the weapon.
Once you recognize them, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty weird to be pointing a gun to his partner's head. But the background doesn't really set us up for this being the police office. I mean, I know there's a cop car there and a police officer, but it just looks like a random city street. So it would have been nice if there were more details that showed this is the police station. But even at the police station, there's all these people out here.
Even if at the top, because we kind of see the stairwell and stuff, if we had just gotten a clearer view, NYPD, something like that, then he wouldn't have had to add the little box at the top, police HQ Midtown, right? Because you're absolutely right. Other than the cop car, there's no real indication that's the police station. And it's kind of unfortunate because he did a really good job with the background, all the brickwork, again, the architecture, the scuzzy streets, the newspaper, all on the ground, all that stuff really works well. Good establishing shot, just one kind of important detail missing. Because, you can't assume because there's a cop car outside a building that it's necessarily the police HQ.
No,
I think
that could just be a building that police officer just came out of, or a spot where he stopped. Yeah, and if it did establish this visually as the police station, if you saw like, oh wow, this is how bad the city is, because even right outside the police station, all this trash and mess. This is a rough city.
Yeah, for sure. Which is what I assume he was trying to establish. It's just that one little detail that's missing that doesn't make it as obvious as it should be.
Yeah.
This is a cool.
Yeah.
Not exactly a double page spread, but just very, very interesting layout. And we're getting more of those cool SHADOWHAWK with a city backdrop shot in the first one that, again, works really well, and I think is just as cool as the other ones in this issue. The point of view, the angle looking down, I think works really well.
Yep. And tons of details. I mean, you always get the sense of this being such a busy city, with all the cars down there, just enough lights to let you know there's street lights and that the cars have their lights on. There's all those little figures too. I mean, there's just tons of people that are down there walking the streets. This is very realistic of, like, me and my girlfriend are making trips to New York very recently because of what we're doing in life. And this is very accurate of what it's like, of like, you're
absolutely
out on any random night late, and there's just, people are out and about. There's still cars going. Love how the colorist switched it up a ton on this page, using the purples for the armor as a nice touch. Those little bits of like the blue and the teal for the lighting on the buildings. And then when it goes to those panels in the middle, I mean, the somersault action going across the roofs is awesome. I mean, we definitely get the sense of him traveling across the city. It's that straight on shot, which for this, it works fantastic. But getting the somersault across the buildings, and then the step to the edge and the burning building in front, like, yep, he's made his journey, because he left off in panel one. He left off the building. We get into the somersault motion, getting 4 little figure shots of it, and then boom, now he's at the spot. We get the shot of him looking down. We get the shot of him seeing the enemy, and then the leaping into action. And he uses those similar motion lines, like what we liked in Youngblood #1, where we've got all the lines, but the colorist is taking the time to individually color them.
Yeah. Use a few multiple colors there to kind of create that that effect or heighten that effect, I think works really well. And they kept it fairly light because again, they've thrown some very much darker tones on SHADOWHAWK there in the foreground. So I think yeah, that works really well. That's awesome.
Now, does SHADOWHAWK's arm come across as being too long?
It's a little long. Yeah. Yeah. It's a little
Yeah.
disproportionate.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite sure what he's thinking is going to happen by punching Arson in this metallic helmet. You know, there's only limited I guess maybe from the momentum of falling off a whatever 40-story building, maybe that would create enough impact and momentum here. But of course, he's armored, so it doesn't have much effect.
Yeah, it's armor versus armor. It would be a great spot to have just double footed him to the face.
Yes.
Just gotten in that kind of like shot of just crashing into him 2 feet to the face.
Because you also got to wonder how, once SHADOWHAWK's jumped down and punched this guy in the face, how is he recovering and landing? Because I have to assume here, in reality, he'd just kind of fall flat on his face. Wouldn't really have the time to flip.
Yeah, punch and then have to try to pop into a roll or something. But when you see the next page, it doesn't go that well anyway. So this is another one where I like Jim Valentino doing something the other guys are doing, but doing his own little version of it. Because they had brought in that manga paneling style with like all the rougher lines around the edges.
Yeah.
And so he uses it, but instead blacks out the space and uses it as a cutout version, which I think is a nice touch.
It's different. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, we're getting a window into the action this way. And we definitely, with the angle, get the drama that like SHADOWHAWK's immediately in some trouble with this backhand. And the colors, again, all those little cloud details in like the magenta in the background and the pinks.
Yeah.
It's really pretty. It pops.
Yeah, it's fun for sure. Exactly. Even that little bit of fire behind SHADOWHAWK in the circular panel, I think works really well. And that's just pure color. I don't think Valentino drew any of that. That's just the colors adding those flames, and I think it works really well.
Yeah, and I guess he keeps up the comical with the effects wording because the SWAC.
Yeah.
Yeah, he always there's a bop in there.
And a bop is funny.
Yeah, there's always like it's a dark gritty comic, but there's always these hints of silliness. I do love that circular panel, like you said, because there's no lines to the fire, but it really does set it off nicely.
Yeah.
The action in this one works a bit better than this. It's definitely got the back and forth of a battle. Like he came in, he punched the guy backhanded him back. He gets knocked back. Somehow he manages to somersault around onto his feet. It would have made been more of a rolling or have to get up from the ground action, but he's on his feet and jumps forward and gives a punch. The guy falls back, but then somehow comes back across with his right hand. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, a little more, realistic in quotes than maybe the sequence from before, right? A little easier to kind of break down the moments and the sequence. Yeah.
It's almost like SHADOWHAWK punched him, but spun too much, revealing his back, which is a bad idea. The guy hit him on the back, but then he did spin around and gave him that back elbow.
Yeah.
So there's a little more of the whirly derby. Gave him the back elbow with the left, and then kept spinning. Punched him in the helmet and shattered the glass. So yeah, I mean the action works out a little better. It's just a little quirky. But then after the punch to the glass, the guy, his hit is really kind of the weirdest one at the end. There's just this for trying to give the effect of power. I do get that sense because you get just this big like bam and the motion lines that are coming out, and then the guy laughing at him and then shoots fire. But it's weird that he gets popped in the face, head going back, glass shatters, and then just comes back forward with this
blow to SHADOWHAWK. Yeah.
Yeah. I also, once his helmet's smashed, he's not immediately reacting to the fire. Like all that heat just suddenly coming into the suit via the shattered glass.
Yeah.
I feel like it should have been more the moment where like the glass shatters and he's just like trying to cover his face. and maybe try to escape through the fire.
That would have made total sense. Yeah, a bit more of a reaction to, he's got the protective suit against the fire. Once it's breached, maybe even just showing him with, like in this panel here, right in the middle there where you see his face, if there were like beads of sweat or something, even just some sort of reaction to the fire.
Yeah, so if we take a look at the next page, if they had had the criminal react to the mask breaking open and the fire hitting him, he could have turned away, which would have better set up him turning away from Shadowhawk, which is what he does. But in the comic, they make it contrived. Shadowhawk's down a little bit, and the guy's just like, whatever, I'm not going to deal with you anymore, and starts to walk away, which is weird as a criminal who was just fighting to kill him. So if he just reacted to the flames, they could have set up that same turn and had Shadowhawk. So actually would have been more brutal if the guy was reacting to the flames, burning his face. Maybe he starts to run away, and then Shadowhawk's like, no, you don't get away after what you've done. And then still throw the Hawk Star and bam, hit his tank and cause the explosion. But then also Shadowhawk maybe have to go, ooh, maybe I went a little far there. I just made the situation worse. Maybe there was a better way to handle it. I think it would have been a better setup and been a smoother transition in the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to what we talked about earlier, if Shadowhawk, like I said, he breaks spines, but he threw the Hawk Star at some guy's throat. So is he willing to kill? In this instance, it seems like he's not, because he does say you throw the weapon, realizing too late that it's headed straight for his gas-filled backpack, right? So he didn't intend to blow him up.
Yeah.
That is what happened. And we get a beautiful, once again, funny sound effect with the kablamo.
Yeah. It's a nice characterization, actually not showing things always working out.
Yeah.
That's very realistic. You'd have a lot of mistakes. Again, I love what the colors did. That panel 4, where he goes to those, there's sort of a purple magenta color background, make that panel pop. Really like that a lot. With all the other panels having the flames. And then we've got that big explosion panel. And then they go back to the reporter character and setting up all of Shadowhawk, all the people that it's really setting up the criminals like we're supposed to sympathize with them and feel like they are being victimized. But I mean, they are mugging and killing people. So
it's an odd choice to,
Yeah. I wanted to give Valentino one more, like a really cool thing that he did. If you look at, it's all 3 of these spreads that he did these 2-page spreads. So he did the one where Shadowhawk's coming off the building, and that's the one right before the center of the comic. So it's a smart spot to start these 3 spreads because the art doesn't get eaten up inside the valley because it's so close to the center. And then the middle spread is literally the center of the comic. So it does lay out nice and flat, and you can see all the art. So there are panels that go right into the valley, but you don't lose them, even facial shots. And then the 3rd spread is just after the center place of the comic book. So it still opens up pretty good. It was
you shouldn't have any issues with the art getting scrunched in the middle. Yeah, these are kind of the practical things when you're producing comic books that for print that you got to think about, right? Unfortunately, there's practical aspects that, when you encounter those problems in books or those issues happening, it's because the artist didn't keep in mind the final kind of physical product that's going to be available and some of the constraints that happen with, the physical media and the way they're printed and the way they're produced.
Yeah, Jim Valentino was definitely thinking and staying ahead of the game.
Like we talked about earlier, he's got a lot more experience doing this than the other Image guy. So maybe he's able to avoid those problems because of that, right?
Yeah. Then it goes from the news reporter talking about the problems the criminals are dealing with to going and showing us one. Here's one of the guys whose spines Shadowhawk broke, and he's laid up in the hospital, and his girlfriend is giving a sob story of like, well, how are we going to feed our little baby, and who's going to cover these bills? Like, yeah, but you're a bad person.
Now that we can't commit crimes, how are we going to feed our kids? Exactly.
Yeah, like, who's going to go out and brutalize people in the streets for their pocket money so that I can get some formula? Like,
I guess it could be argued that maybe she didn't necessarily know that he was a criminal or doing that kind of stuff, but Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of a stretch for sure.
Yeah, it's not the speech of like, oh, this is why I was telling you not to get involved with the gang, and like
Exactly. Yeah.
I I know you saw this as like a way to get money, but there had to have been some other options, and now look what's happened. Would be a better speech, but instead she's to be fair, they're the hero in their own story. So in their story,
That's yeah.
we're in the gang, this is the life we live. We're brutalizing people to get money for our family, and now he did this to you, and I got to get revenge for you. I got to
Yeah.
get after this SHADOWHAWK guy and get him back for what he did. So uh, it's too bad there's not a full gang in the hospital around him saying this. Like really play
Um,
up the gang life of like, hey, this is our side.
yeah. Yeah.
We got
And
to get this guy.
we're gonna have to get this Shadowhawk character.
Yeah, very
Lot
much.
lot lot of Dutch tilts in this comic. I noticed another one with the panel at the bottom here. So
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, he's really using them, and it also because he's doing them, it really helps to stretch out these scenes where we get to see more. Because even though we're not seeing both sides of the alleyway stretch back, we're getting to see one side of it stretch further back, so that does give more the impression of this being a deep alleyway rather than if it had been a straight on shot, we'd only see a little bit of it. It's
absolutely. Yeah.
he's doing a lot of smart things.
Well,
Oh,
more again when we talk about backgrounds and stuff. Just this panel here, just a throwaway panel to a certain extent, but
hmm
the character's silhouetted and
hmm
pulls the focus more into maybe like the background elements and stuff. You've got cars, you got a bus, you got some buildings, you got some crap on the ground, some
Yep.
disgusting looking garbage cans. Like he's really doing a good job with those backgrounds.
And the lighting effect coming in from behind, so his shadow goes down the alleyway, and then
Yeah.
there's even the effect of some liquid on the ground which disrupts the shadow, and there's a bit of lines in that liquid to give a touch of reflection.
And he's doing that thing again where he's transitioning from one scene to another on the same page. Like the last panel of the
Mhm.
page is actually the first panel of the next sequence, right? He's done that a lot in this issue.
Yeah, he has done that a lot, and then it's just setting up for what we're going to see in the next issue. If there's a guy who's on drugs, he's wandering into an alleyway, he's not feeling well. There's a small error in that there's not a grate on the ground in the first panel of page 21,
Yeah.
so that we would then like, because he did this so well in the setup of the first page where you saw the stairs going down, the people standing at the top of the stairs thinking about it, and then we know they went down the stairs into the park. This one just needed that grate, because we'd see the grate, then we see this sort of, we just kind of see a shape with some liquid on it, but obviously under the grate, and then going further into the sewer below, we see the feet on the ground with obviously this weird green liquid coming off and some rats. It's a good setup.
Yeah. So he's basically using this whole sequence here to introduce the antagonist for the next issue, right?
Yeah, yeah, he's setting up this big monster guy. If we flip the page, we get a nice 2-page spread. And again, he's not the rock star artist, but there's still a lot of work put into this. That's not a bad looking monster. Put a whole lot of sort of vein lines in there, a whole lot of splashes of some kind of dirty muck coming off of him. We don't know yet that it's acidic, but you kind of get that impression.
Well, the
Um,
green color I think is meant to evoke that a little bit, but without giving it away too much, I guess.
yeah. And then,
Well,
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say we're going to be seeing more of the effects of that in the next issue, right?
Yeah. And also, there's a little bit of a jump, or I guess not a jump, but a setup where we do see that grate that we saw above in the previous page is now in his hand. So
Yeah.
like he's ripped that out. So we can kind of know story wise, like he's about to go up there. Um, all the details again. I mean, the time that he puts into doing the brick lines, and they're wavy, so it's kind of nice and cartoony. I like those little touches of like, I want to see reality, but I want to see the cartoon version of reality.
Sure.
It doesn't need to be picture perfect. So I much prefer seeing wavy lines because, yeah, somebody drew that. When they do just straight lines, like they took the ruler and like doom, 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 doom. I don't, that I don't appreciate that as much. I don't
It's
enjoy it as much.
it ends up looking a little too mechanical. Yeah, this definitely feels more like a building that's been there for a while. Things have moved
Mhm.
around a little bit. Definitely is more evocative for sure. There's something here. I just noticed it now, but to me, there's something with the background here that's a little bit different in the treatment with the shadows and kind of the textures and stuff. And even on this pipe here in the background, it almost looks like the way Joe Quesada draws backgrounds. I'm just kind of noticing it here, and it just feels aesthetically very close to what he does. Um, so I don't know if Valentino was looking at some Joe Quesada stuff and thought, that's an interesting interpretation or whatever. But yeah, it just kind of jumps out at me here that it almost feels like Joe Quesada drew this background behind the character.
Mm. Yeah, I like those cracks that he puts in the bricks. Again, given that feel of it's been here a while. Those pipes are awesome looking. The colorist again really making the page pop by having the yellows and kind of a little bit of green on the background, the part that's lit. Got
Yeah.
the shadow of the monster behind that. So
Yeah, the transition from shadow to light to shadow works really well, I think.
yeah.
Looks
And
really
again,
cool.
using colors that aren't realistic, but that make a page pop, like purple, and there's a couple of shades of purple for this pipe.
Yeah.
It's pretty, it's just beautiful.
And again, we don't get to see how this, liquidy stuff that he's got pouring off of his body is going to be used, but we, like I said, we know what happens in the next issue, but also there's kind of a hint, I guess, in his, what I would say is kind of a lame name,
Yeah.
but he's called the Liquefier. Pretty on the
Yeah.
nose once again. So, reading that, you assume, oh, I guess maybe he liquefies people, right? Like it's
Yeah.
pretty obvious.
Would also be hilarious if in his day job, he was a guy that comes into companies and liquefies assets.
Yeah, I just recently rewatched Breaking Bad, and
Uh-huh.
there's a few sequences where they get rid of bodies with some sort of, I think it's
Oh,
hydrochloric acid or something like
yeah.
that. So, kind of similar to this, I guess.
Yeah.
He'd be
Man.
good at getting rid of bodies for the mob.
Yeah. As I looked through this comic, and I mentioned before, this was a big part of the premise was when I looked at Spawn, I felt that drop off in issue 2. But when I looked at Shadowhawk #2, I just felt like, oh, this guy's just hitting a stride and he's just rising to the occasion. Again, other than the cover, everything about it's such a prettier issue than issue 1. The
Yeah,
details on the characters, the detail of the backgrounds, the colorist is gotten even stronger because the colorist had some cool things in the first one,
yeah,
but it feels like the colorist is so much more in tune with this issue now. Maybe feels a little more comfortable. Maybe they had a little more time. I don't know, but
yeah.
he does a lot more coloring that's for effect rather than it being realistic. It's kind of the big thing with like the Bolin version of the Killing Joke versus,
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
where there's colors for effect rather than just consistently hitting the same colors for the character,
Like,
coloring to make
yeah,
art
because
pop.
Boland's talked about this, and he with his color really went for objective color, right? The object, an apple is red, the grass is green. That's
Mhm.
what he went with, and that's more in tune, I guess, with his natural art style as well. I get that, but the John Higgins colors are much more symbolic of the scene that's going on and kind of the weird surrealist psychedelic effect of the book and just the situation that Gordon finds himself in. And I guess both versions have value, but for
Mhm.
my money, there's just something much more evocative, and that the coloring works better with the storyline, with
Yeah.
the original John Higgins color and the kind of madness that's kind of being established in the storyline,
Oh yeah. 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 It for sure. There's
even though
spots.
it's not realistic or objective. Again.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. But it helps strike the mood, and I feel like this colorist did that a lot in
Yeah,
here. And yeah, so many pages where they add so much via the colors. But overall, this comic just felt so much stronger than issue 1, and so many different layouts. The fact that he did those 3 different spreads and he took the time to think about having it in the middle and setting it up right so that you don't lose a lot in the valley. um sure, the villains he has aren't the coolest, but he's all I mean, it's a pretty good looking monster.
he's he's still giving you a lot. He's giving you your money's worth, right? Like you compared with Spawn #2. Spawn #2 just feels very light. Like not a lot happens in that issue, right? Obviously, he
Mhm.
introduced the Violator, but that's pretty much about it. We're getting a lot of what we got in issue 1 again. Spawn kind of moping around. A quick Sam and Twitch scene, right? Just establishing
Mhm.
those guys again in the storyline. With this issue here, we're definitely getting a lot more story from Shadowhawk, right? Not specifically the character themselves, a
Mhm.
lot of the secondary characters and the antagonists and stuff. And just like I said, just really giving you a lot more for your money in this issue than issue 1.
And this is a comic where, and this was and not something I had seen before, and they were making a big point of it. So far, we only know the protagonist from their hero persona. We don't know who they are in their off time. I don't think we've had a hint yet about it, but we've got these people around the
Yeah.
periphery
I
who are
mean,
there.
we have, but we don't know which of those people is Shadowhawk, right?
Yeah,
So we
we're
haven't
getting
pieced
some
it together yet.
details.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
we're learning about people in the background, and some of them might be Shadowhawk, and we don't know yet. So that was another interesting little story move. But overall, I mean, this is like of the issue twos, this is my rock star so far, with Spawn kind of being the one that fell off. But I was pleasantly surprised with Youngblood
Yeah.
#2. Rediscovered it. I was like, oh my gosh, this did move forward a little bit, not by
Uh,
leaps and bounds, but it's
Yeah,
a little
I'll
bit
say it again.
more.
Youngblood 2 is probably my favorite Youngblood issue
Yeah.
overall. Like I definitely feel like it's the strongest.
Yeah, and Wildcats #2 a little stronger than its
Yeah,
previous issue,
yeah, I
partially
think
because good.
yeah, I think Jim Lee did really well with his second issue as well. And I guess soon enough we're going to be next week reviewing Cyberforce #2 is the next one, I believe. So
Yeah, that's the
we'll see
last
how
one.
they left us on a good cliffhanger, right? With issue 1, we both really liked that last splash page that establishes some of the villains we're going to meet in issue 2. So I am looking forward to that one. See
Yeah.
how well it's followed through. I know that there was another issue where the last page established, yeah, Youngblood #1, right, established the beginning of a conflict with the Four, which never gets resolved in issue #2. So I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to Cyberforce #2 because I do remember that there is, you know, page 1 of Cyberforce #2 directly follows the splash page from Cyberforce #1. So I'm looking forward to that one for sure.
Yeah, he does a good job with that. Again, now this comic wasn't way behind. Jim Valentino was doing an every other month schedule, and I don't know if the actual advertisements reflected that. I think it just had him listed like you should see this month after month, but he very much falls into an every other month. So there is a letters page that already they managed to squeeze it in.
Well, it's cover dated. There's no actual cover date, so I'll look on the inside here. So this is October 1992, and
Yeah,
issue 1 was August, right? So yeah, so
yeah,
he's kind of hitting a bi-monthly schedule there.
yeah, and he does that with the second series as well, where issue. Oh yeah, so he goes every other month until he hits. He does Shadowhawk 1, 2, and 3 are every other month, but then Shadowhawk #4 he falls off. It takes 4 months to get the conclusion out,
Oh
and
wow,
then
okay.
2 months later, the first issue of series 2. 2 months after that, the second issue of series 2. So he's mostly pretty consistent, but there is quite the wait in between issue 3 and 4. And maybe there was the I don't I should have a line on here about when the transition from Malibu purely over to Image happens. I'd be curious if that was part of the effect of
Maybe
what the
those
delay.
lined up, and yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Um,
Uh, One last thing we're going to mention. So we've
okay.
got the letter page here.
Yeah.
This I thought was pretty fun because right away I feel like is Jim Valentino the first to kind of, excuse me, over here start
Mhm.
marketing pretty early on with shirts and hats and stuff like that,
Oh
right?
yeah.
He's pretty quick to that.
Yeah.
And then this, I don't know how successful this was because, other than the last few pages and a bunch of issue of Image Comics for this Infinity character, didn't
Yeah.
really see anything else come out. Wasn't that interested, honestly, as I was going through it.
Mhm.
Even back in the day, this wasn't one of the more interesting characters. Obviously, not anything where I was like, man, I can't wait to get that book. Uh,
Mhm.
and that's from, it does say Extra Image Presents.
Mhm.
I don't know this Richard Horry guy where he's from. And interesting, if you pay attention at the bottom here, the signature says Horry, Richard Horry, and then underneath Scott. And that's the pseudonym that Rob Liefeld was using for a while. I'd mentioned a few reviews ago, one of the X-Force covers that was credited with Liefeld and then Scott underneath.
Yeah.
So, you know, knowing that, if you look at this character here, her face, the hands, a lot of the hatching, you know, in her armpit and stuff, you can
Mhm.
see that Rob Liefeld aesthetic on top of this.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're talking about.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
on the inside, not that interesting. The only other thing I would point out here is this Danny Meeke's first work for Image? Because you've got two of the extreme inkers, Danny Meeke and Norm Ratmond, doing their first stuff here. And colors is credited to Paul Scott. So I have to assume that Rob Liefeld's doing the colors here, or he's paying someone to ghost color for him.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
Paul Scott is Rob Liefeld. So
The yeah, it's also kind of it's a nice little indie bit because they did this with some of like the Turtles comics, and Dave Sim did it with Cerebus, where they'd let people get a few pages in the back. I doubt there's much payment for it. More of a like, yeah, if you want to put together a little something, sure, we'll spend we'll spend a little couple of cents, couple $100, and we'll just get you in the back. And if something
yeah,
happens with it, cool. If it helps you, cool. If you want to do it, I think it's a nice reward.
the
Eric
old exposure
Stevenson's,
bit, right?
yeah, and Eric Stevenson's doing a bunch of editing and like, hey man, I got this little thing I'm working on. Okay, sure, we can get you 4 pages in the back or whatever. Give it a shot. Why not?
Yeah.
I think it's a real nice like looking out for your friends, and it's a little something extra you can do, and it's good camaraderie. So,
Well, it's
and
the
it,
kind of stuff that was possible, I think, early on at Image. And then as
Mhm.
they grew bigger and their studios got bigger and they had more responsibilities, that kind of stuff kind of fell by the wayside eventually.
Yeah, we also the
Which is
only
unfortunate, but also is why probably we have such a nostalgic kind of feeling about the early Image stuff, right? It was just getting in on the ground floor, and it almost seemed like anything was possible, and all these guys are helping each other out and stuff. There was kind of a clubhouse kind of feel to it, right? Like you were in on it, which
yeah
slowly kind of dissipated as most things do. You know, it's like a band that you like, you know, that put out their first album, hit it
yeah
big, and then by the second album, you're like, yeah, they're not what they used to be. You know, your connection to them is not as strong. Your access to them is not as strong as well, right? So
yeah, it's a good point. The issue also has that black and white of cover 3, which is a
yeah,
pretty nice image. And it's cool to see just the inked version of it
well,
before
it's
all
another one of those great Shadowhawk on a city backdrop images that Valentino's really good at.
yeah, and I really like the covered issue 3, but yeah, it's cool to see just the inked version of it and see the details before they apply the effects. But yeah, great issue. I really this is not, again, as a kid, I I looked at Shadowhawk. I bought it because I was buying everything Image put out, but this was like the one that like, well, I'm getting it because I'm getting everything, but I didn't pay a lot of attention to it. But as an adult, especially after having made comics and making them now, this is one where I look back and I appreciate it so much more because I can see the work. It's a great example of how to make a comic and how to put your details in, how to give everybody the most bang for the buck. I could just appreciate his process so much more.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, he was really thinking about the reader for each issue, making sure each issue has something exciting, something fun, a cool splash page, a cool shot of Shadowhawk, right? Again, where we talk about Spawn number 2, where issue 2 drops off and it's kind of boring and not a lot's going on. Shadowhawk does not suffer from that at all. And everything just gets heightened more and more, I think. And we'll see if that continues, obviously, when we review issue 3 and issue 4.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add to that, Mark?
No, I think we've talked plenty about this issue.
For sure.
I'm hoping folks are pulling these up, and while you're working on stuff, you're listening to us because we got a good long speeches here.
Oh, this one will last you a few hours if you're watching, guys. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So far, our reviews are definitely stuff while you're working in the yard, or you're putting stuff together, you're cleaning the kitchen. This is a good time to pull these up.
Fairly exhaustive and exhausting. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Well, if we're not going to talk anymore about SHADOWHAWK number 2, we'll move on with our end of the video spiel. So, guys, that is it for today. So thank you very much for watching. We really do appreciate your support. That was our review of SHADOWHAWK issue number 2 by Jim Valentino. If you're into comic books, you might be into the comic books that me and Mark make as well. So for myself, you can check out my stuff, Big Baby and STARCRASHER, at KingComics.CA. Hit me up online. And Mark's got all his stuff on Big Cartel, and that's where you can get his books like Darkest Image and KAYFABE Death of a Super, which we reviewed. So you can go check out that review and get yourself the book after that. Anything else you want to say there, Mark?
Yeah, and I got the set of my old Guano Guy comics up there. So it's quite a few of those, like 8, 9 issues. So yeah.
Cool, man. That's awesome.
Some of those.
All right. Well, that is it, guys. So thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate all your support out there. If you are subscribed, we really appreciate it. And if you are not, please hit the subscribe button below. It really helps the channel out, helps us grow, helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books, just like we are and just like Mark and I are. So thanks again. And everyone out there, have an awesome day. Thanks again, Mark.
Absolutely, buddy.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents STARCRASHER one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.